Hi everyone and welcome to the weekly update with me, Richard Perry, market analyst at Handset Markets. Each week I take through the key events that I will be driving your investments in the coming days. Now, it is the big week that we've been waiting for a while. Actually, it's the Fed and the BOJ both announcing on Wednesday. This is going to be the key decisions that sort of drive markets, I think, for the coming weeks, because we've got certainly this consolidation that we've had in the last few weeks in the run-up to these big events. I think we could start to see some direction once more. The volatility sort of very much calmed down through August, then a bit of anticipation in the sort of last week or so as to exactly what the Fed might do and the BOJ. And we're now sort of, I think, in the next couple of days going to sit fairly tightly ahead of these big announcements, but then we could get a large amount of volatility coming back into the markets as traders start to take their views once more. Now, the BOJ is first up on Wednesday morning. Now, what could they do? They're not actually likely to do a huge amount, although they could cut the deposit rate once again, but I think what's more likely is that they will sort of tweak the JGB purchase scheme that they're on, that they're going to try and focus more on the front end of the curve in an attempt to steepen the rates and help the net interest rate margins for the banks. That would free them up to a certain extent to loosen the deposit rate further, so that could well be seen. But there could be a little bit of a disappointment potentially on the BOJ, because you've got the Fed just a matter of hours later. They may not wish to do too much ahead of the Fed, just see what the Fed's going to do. Now, the Fed, again, not expected to hike interest rates. Certainly looking at the Fed funds futures, which is around about sort of between 10 and 15% probability, but the key factor will be what they do in terms of December. Are they going to now explicitly set the market up for a December hike? It seems as though all the Fed members in recent weeks in their rhetoric have been sort of leaning towards that stage. But does the Fed actually now go on record and do it as well? I think that could be seen. If it isn't seen, that might be a bit of a disappointment for the dollar. We could see some dollar selling off. So we could see the dollar strengthening on the back of a setup for a December hike. But I think there's a fair amount of volatility that may well come out of this press conference on Wednesday with Janet Yellen. And I think ultimately that's what the markets are all looking out for, because you look on the equity side, for example, there's been a lot of volatility in recent weeks as the market's sort of been pushing more towards the likelihood of a December rate hike, and ultimately equity markets have been so well supported recently because of the fact that the Fed haven't been moving on rates. Seen as a bit of a change, that would be maybe a bit of a profit-taking signal. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. But looking at these forex markets, well, we've seen euro dollar that's consolidating. Cable has also been consolidating in a broader range, but generally speaking. And also we've seen dollar yen, which has been consolidating as well. These markets could all get some direction off these key central bank meetings, and I think we may well do. I think euro dollar, for example, below 111, that's a big support area. You've got cable sort of edging back towards the sort of middle to lower area of the trading range, as the sort of dollar has strengthened in the last week or so. But I think more ultimately we're going to see some right old volatility in the dollar yen, which could be the one to watch, certainly on Wednesday anyway. In terms of your equity markets, well, as I said, we've seen sort of markets topping out to a certain extent as this sort of profit taking has come in. A little bit of concern that about what the Fed may well do, and we've seen the DAX, for example, topping over. We've seen the FTSE 100 just starting to make some lower highs, although it has rallied back on Monday. I think a move back towards a test of the 66.12 to 66.54 level could well be seen. That's a big support area. On the DAX, you're looking at 10,120 as a big long-term pivot, and on the S&P 500, we came back to find support pretty much bang on the 2120 line. That is a key breakout support. If you sort of see a move back below that, you could see some further selling pressure ensue. Now, in terms of your commodity prices, they have been running around in negative correlation again to the dollar. The strengthening dollar has been negative for these commodities. You've seen gold, silver and oil all falling over. However, you've seen a bit of a recovery on Monday, but will it last? You've seen gold coming back to a massive support line sort of confluence of long-term trend supports, horizontal breakout supports, and also the 89-day moving average. You've also seen the oil price coming back to key levels, 43 around the WTI, 45.30 around Brent crude. These are big key support levels that we need to watch out for. Now, the supply side issues for oil remain key drivers. You've got Libya looking to come back online with some of its oil output, and also this whole argument of whether there's going to be a production freeze or not. That's in Algeria. That's going to be coming up at the end of the month. So lots going on, lots of volatility driving these markets. And what are we looking out for the rest of this week? Well, just generally speaking, these central bank meetings on Wednesday, we've got 3 of them. BOJ starting up, then the Fed, and rounding off with the RBNZ. So lots of central bank drivers this week. Not a great deal else out other than that, to be honest, apart from on Friday we've got the flash PMIs, which give forward-looking views on growth. Certainly doesn't look as though the Eurozone is sort of faring all that well, because again the forecasts are just dropping away, and the US not so great either. So what does that mean for monetary policy going forward? But we'll get more of an idea of that, I think, after the Fed anyway. So lots going on this week, but mainly Fed and BOJ driven. So I wish you good luck in your trading, and I will speak to you next